So we'll start with the lower posteriors on the ridge. I may check the first upper bicuspid just to see the relationship that I'm going to have. I'm going to soften up the wax on the ridge. I'll do one quadrant on the lower here. I reseal my base. I think I soaked my model a little bit too much there between shots. So I'll reseal this once again. Make sure it's down all the way. Nice and hot. There we go. I don't want that to move. Ay, ay, ay. And we're going to put this whole quadrant on probably all at once. I'll stop with the first bicuspid just to see our relationship between mandible and maxilla and see if we can achieve this lingualized occlusion that would be more advantageous for an implant supported or implant retained lower denture. I'm going to grind the denture tooth is a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry. Ay, ay, ay. Again. There we go. I don't think I have to grind this one. Add some wax. Again, the canine should just go at the inclined plane of the fore, not the central groove of the fore. A lot of you are joining the incisal line angle of the canine, occlusal line angle, with the central groove. Then it makes it look like the bicuspid is the canine and not the canine. And it gives it that kind of... Now, these are all going to be on a flat plane. I know my lowers are. I know my uppers are with the laterals slightly off the plane. But I can use the advent of a good eye at the beginning of a setup to see that this is very close. Now, with the Vita teeth, the buccal cusp tip is always a little bit high. So I may reduce that after on number 4 on the first bicuspids. But before I go further, maybe I'll go and I'll put this first bicuspid on the upper just to see if I line up pretty close for this lingualized occlusion. So the lingual cusp of the upper, the stamp cusp of the upper, will sit in the distal fossa of the lower 4. We'll get this in place. And I'll just roughly, and there we have it. It's pretty, it's spot on actually. It's sitting in the distal fossa of the lower 4. So we can take that out. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Let's take the 4 off and let's continue with all the lowers since we know we are in the right ballpark for this lingualized occlusion. A little contrived, I apologize, that the lower anteriors are right at the end of the neutral zone, at the labial edge. Possibly if it was a clinical try-in, we'd have too much lip support outside the neutral zone in the anterior section. But for simulation purposes, I think we're just within limits. Now, let's get back to, I'll reduce enough wax to add the teeth, but not too much wax that I have to add teeth. I have the plane of occlusion already marked on the outside of my model right here. The height. You can even leave the end of the bite block if you want to manage that height. Now, with experience, you may build in some compensating curve. But for us, I want us to go on a flat plane first. I'll soften all this up here with my spatula. I think wax preparation is very important in the denture setup. And we spend a lot of time manipulating the wax, trying to control the wax. I'll go into number 5. It looks like with the 22 degrees, we'll be able to put on the full complement of posterior teeth here. Unlike we were discussing, we may have dropped a bicuspid, but because of the extension of the anteriors outside the neutral zone a little bit, I think we're going to get all of these on. And I'm lining them up at the right height, very close to it. I haven't rushed for any kind of setup plane. This wax here was just a little bit stiff on number 7. Let me reheat it up again. I just couldn't quite depress number 7 where I wanted to. I've got some mobility of my rim. Terrible. Let's seal that down again. Yeah, separation of the model is great, but a little too much is not good. And again, central groove on the ridge. Buccal and lingual cusp of the lower posteriors touching the setup plane or the occlusal plane. I'm using my eye, and I can see that number 6 is high, number 7 is canted, and I'll proceed to adjust those as I put some wax here to lute them in position, and then that'll make them easier to move without dislodging completely out of the wax. Don't get wax on the occlusion of the teeth. You'll just spend time taking it off. Just sealing that down again. I'm going to go a little bit extra on sealing this base down, which is kind of frustrating me a little bit. The model was a little oversaturated. Maybe the positive is I get the voids out of my occlusion rim here. Now, you can see the wax is very soft. I'm going to add some more here. And now that I have them in a very close position, now I can start to kind of do some adjustments. Now I'm going to check occlusally. I'm going to check buccal line angles. I'm going to check lingual heights. Number 4 always has this kind of conical shape to it, so I just want to take the tip up slightly, and that'll kind of create it to look like number 5, 6, and 7, and number 3. That buccal cusp tip is a little heavy. And then you can go with your setup plane. So there we have one. And my eye was pretty close because these are all touching buccal and lingual. Down the line, central groove all in line, lingual cusps all in line, on the central, on the top of the ridge, central groove on top of the ridge, and then we'll proceed with the 4th quadrant quickly. Reduce the wax again. Soften the wax. Don't flame the teeth, by the way. Be very careful if the teeth are plastic. We don't want to start them on fire and melt them and burn them. Maintain the integrity of the denture teeth, please. It's kind of important. I have to trim number 4 to get it over the cap. Looks like I might hit some, just slightly. Put some soft wax here. Okay. Number 4. Not yet. Just hitting the acrylic on the cap there, just a little bit right there. We've got lots of room. Reduce a little tooth structure to incorporate that. Remember, central groove on the line. Probably do all 4 at a time before I start to fine tune, but I can, with the waxes prepared, I think I can kind of get pretty close to the position I want. I can see where the central groove is. I'm kind of guiding it with my finger and my spatula. And again, I've got my line marked on my model here. I've got my line of the ridge marked on my model. And before I go do any super fine movements, I got them pretty close, a little bit high, and then I'll lute them in place so they don't wobble around when I'm manipulating the position. Nice and hot wax, so when I go to wax up, there's no voids. Like I said, a lot of the time is spent with the wax here. I can see that I'm out of position a little bit, but I'm not in a rush. Where am I on the screen? There I am. Not in a complete rush. Wax is still easy to manipulate. I'm going to add some more here for my wax up where I'm a little short. Easy, not on the occlusion. Maybe down there in the flange. I may carve it away. But I know I'm going to have to add some there now anyway, so I might as well add some there to support my denture setup. Okay, just a little touch of the alcohol torch. Just a touch. I can keep the other side in action if I have to. And now I'm going to look down the line. That's pretty close, just with my eye. Look at my setup plate. A little bit high. Before moving forward, I might take the tip of number 4 off. It's just a little too pointy. It'll create the same buckle line angles as number 5. And double check that all these are on a flat plane. Thing is, if you start pushing this down, this is softer, it'll all fall over that way. So just be careful on the hand pressure you're putting in. These are all lined up down the line. This is on the ridge. Canine line angle can be a little bit out more. So I don't look at number 4 sticking out more than number 3 for my canine eminence. And I think there you have it. The lowers, maybe I'll go back on this side. Looks like I have some adjustments here to make. On number 6, ever so slightly. Let me just add some wax. Let me double check. Yeah, it seems to have fallen off number 7 here just a little bit. There we go. Just kind of lift that back up onto the plane. Let me double check again. And I can always get my instrument underneath here. Prop up the lingual cusp. So, all the lowers are on the ridge for function. Not past an inclined plane in the retromolar pad area. Unfortunately, I'm stretching the neutral zone in the anterior, but I still think within, aesthetic reasons. Luckily, again, we have the implant retention underneath. I'm adding some wax because I'm happy with the position, and I'm going to have to wax this up, festoon it for trying. If I add too much wax after my balancing, then the teeth will shift even more. Because as the wax shrinks, there's obviously some deformation. So rather the wax shrink now, before I have any occlusion, than the wax shrink after I've painstakingly made some contacts. that are necessary for protrusive and left lateral, right lateral balancing contacts, or even just centric contacts. I don't want to have that shrinkage happen because I got to add wax later. Add it now. You're going to have to anyway, so what are we waiting for? Add it. I'm satisfied with these positions of the lower teeth. They're done. 95%. There's always some slight tweaking of the canines, maybe some slight occlusal grinding. I'm looking again. Looks like I moved that number 7 up a little too aggressively under that plate. I lifted it. Still not satisfied with that number 7. And there we have it. Okay, we'll come back for the lower posteriors.